Starting. Yep, we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Show and Tell, brought to you by the Linked Data, Interoperability, Analytics, Knowledge Base Working Groups of Ex Libris User Groups, Igloo, and Illuna. We have a great presentation today from Wayne Schneider of Index Data, talking about his work for the Library of Congress on BIBFRAME and underlying technology on top of their Voyager system. Before we get started, I'll just mention that if you have questions, which we will take at the end of the presentation, you can type them into the live chat, which is on the right. You can scroll down a little bit and it says type something here. This presentation is of special interest to Linked Open Data and Interoperability Working Groups. And if you're not on our mailing lists, and you'd like to be, just search for Igloo or Illuna, find the pages for the special interest working groups you're interested in, and there's instructions about how to subscribe. So without further ado, I'll introduce Wayne. He has worked in library technology for more than 20 years, and working in libraries in New York, Michigan, Minnesota, before taking his current position at Index Data. He was lucky enough to start out in libraries when curiosity and the willingness to try something new was enough to make a career out of it. And outside of library work, Wayne is a baseball dad and part-time choral geek. Okay, so take it away, Wayne.
All right, good morning from Minnesota here, where we have snow here at the end of April, which is kind of a drag. So I'm Wayne Schneider from Index Data, and so we've been around. We're sort of a funny little company. We've been around for 22 years. We're probably the world's oldest library software startup company. We're a small team of eccentrics from around the world who build information retrieval and metadata management software. We build library software because we find it interesting and we find it fun. So the Library of Congress asked us last year to work with them to develop conversion software for transforming legacy MARC records into BIBFRAME 2. So as a father, I'm a father of 2 teenage boys, and let me tell you that this is really not the kind of job your kids want to hear about at the dinner table. They don't want to hear you trying to explain it to their friends' parents. So it's really very much a pleasure to be able to talk to you about it today. So from my perspective, there are really kind of 2 major objectives behind transforming legacy records into BIBFRAME. So let me share my screen. Here we go. So the first objective is a technical objective. What we're trying to do is transform MARC bibliographic records, which you see there on the left, that's represented as MARC XML, into a series of structured assertions, which we call RDF triples, as you see there on the right, or you might call it a graph about the relationships between the works and the instances and the items and the subjects and the events that are described in the record. And the relationships between those entities and a set of rigorously defined concepts such as duration or carrier or time period. So this is kind of an interesting challenge because while the assertions that I'm talking about, assertions about what the subject of a work is or about how you describe an instance or the physical location of an item, they feel really familiar to us as library metadata specialists. The data model that those assertions need to fit into is really, really different. On the one hand, it's much, much flatter. So a single MARC record can explode into dozens of RDF triples. On the other hand, it can really feel a lot more nested as well. So here you see this is a 100 field. So rather than identifying the author, using a single 100 field with associated indicators and subfields, what we end up having to do is we define a contribution property of the work that has as its object a contribution, and then the contribution has a subclass of primary contribution because this is the main entry. And then there's an agent property of that contribution, and then finally within the agent property you see the RDFS label there that contains the familiar authorized form of the author's name. So why is it that we want to do this? Well, the point of RDF triples, the point of linked data, is to allow machines to reason about them, about the relationships between the entities. And so to support their BIBFRAME cataloging pilot this summer, the Library of Congress would like to transform something like 19 million MARC bibliographic records into BIBFRAME. 19 million MARC records, that sounds like an awful lot of data, right? But 19 million MARC bibliographic records is not really big data. The information that's represented in those records is not really structured in a way that you could easily ask big data questions of it. So based on the transformation we've done so far, I'd say those 19 million records will explode into something like 2 billion plus RDF triples, and they would all be related in an RDF graph. And that's big data. So building this enormous graph and linking it into the larger graph of linked data that forms a semantic web, this is a representation of that larger graph. That helps us get at our second objective, which is to remember that what we do in libraries is memory work. So that the intellectual and the cultural legacy of descriptive cataloging, the assertions about cultural objects that are recorded in the MARC record, that represents an invaluable contribution to intellectual history. Continuing to do this work and putting it in a form where it can live on and connecting it with other data in the semantic web, that preserves that legacy for the future. So the technical work involved in MARC record conversion, as we've approached it, involves really three basic steps. The first is a static conversion. First, we convert the records into RDF triples in the BIBFRAME and MADS RDF ontologies using only the data available in a single record. So this results in isolated graphs of each record with newly minted URIs for the entities, the works, the instances, items, agents, subjects that are found within each record. Then a second stage of the work is to do active conversion, which is to attempt to automatically resolve selected entities against authoritative endpoints like the Library of Congress name authority file or the virtual international authority file using match keys built from the data in the MARC record to look up identifiers for the entities. So then this begins to link the isolated graphs together with each other and with other data on the semantic web. Then the third phase of this process when you're doing a conversion project is to do data curation, which is to refine the result graph of your corpus that is generated from your corpus of MARC records by identifying and collapsing duplicate work nodes, for example, and finding other duplicates in among the entities, finalizing the representation, and to identify the links between data sets that might be more difficult to convert automatically. So you might use a tool like OpenRefine, for example, to help you figure out if two works should have the same agent as a contributor. So our work on this project, though, has really been focused on static conversion and active conversion, and our goal is to make data curation something that you can actually accomplish. It's not necessarily a straightforward process. And our technical approach to this work has been to produce a set of XSLT 1.0 style sheets, which ingest MARC XML, and they output RDF XML for the static conversion. And then we have also extended the record conversion subsystem of Index Data's YAS toolkit to provide a facility for doing the active conversion, the looking up of entities against authoritative endpoints. So we looked at a number of candidate technologies for the static conversion, and we just kept coming back to XSLT, as crazy as it seems. But we had some, pretty good reasons for that. The first is that XSLT is an extremely mature technology. It's widely used, it's well understood in the library and metadata management community. And, really, I mean, no one can accuse you of choosing the flavor of the month if what you're using is XSLT1. XSLT1 has really wide support in system libraries through libxml2, and that means it's very easy to integrate with other tools like MARCedit or Ruby or Java or Python or you name it, and with our own tool chain, including YAS and Metaproxy, BESPA2, and so on. And then finally, since what we're really doing is XML processing and transformation, XSLT is well suited for that. That is, after all, what it was designed for. And so we ended up settling on that as a sort of technological foundation. So as we developed the static conversion, the Library of Congress provided specifications for each MARC field and subfield in a MARC record, and so here you can see an example of what that specification looks like. In part, this is a part of the specification for the 210. So what it says is that for the 210 creates a title property of an instance, and the title property has as an object a variant title, subclass abbreviated title, and then you can see that the conversion tells you what to do with each subfield, so that, for example, the subfield A becomes the main title property of the variant title object, and so forth. So we took these conversion specifications, and what we did was we wrote tests for them using Expec. Expec is a behavior-driven development testing framework for xQuery and XSLT. So what you do with Expec is that you say things like, when I encounter a data field 210, I expect the subfield A to create a main title property of a variant title object, and so you write those tests, and then we wrote XSLT templates that produce the desired behavior. So most pieces of the conversion are actually described by a test, which is very, very convenient. And there are currently more than 900 tests in the test suite. So this work that we've done is available under a public domain license on the Library of Congress's LC NetDev GitHub account. You can clone it down and give it a try yourself if you like. You can use an XSLT processor like Saxon or the venerable XSLT proc. So I'll just show you quickly how you would do that. So to clone down the repository, it's not very large. You would do a git clone. Okay, so now I've cloned down the project, and then if you use XSLT proc, which is part of the standard XSLT tools that come included in the Mac OS and are available for Windows and Linux as well. If you use XSLT proc, there are some data sets in that repository I cloned. So if you use XSLT proc, you can say what style sheet you're using and what data file you're doing it against, and then I'm just going to pipe it into file there, and you can see it's very quick. That file is a collection of 100 records, and then you take a look. So here then is the RDF graph that was generated from those records with work and instance entities created in time. Sometimes there will also be item objects created if there's an 050 with a with a call number in it, and these are then described using the ontology for BIBFRAME and also for MADS RDF in the case of subject headings. So you can see here some MADS RDF in there. So it's really pretty straightforward. The conversion has also been included in recent versions of Terry Reese's MARC edit, which is kind of neat. Since it's in the public domain, there are really no restrictions within the United States anyway. There are really no restrictions on how it can be used. So what Terry has done is he has actually included the style sheets as part of the MARC Next utilities that he's built. So if you go into MARC Next in MARC Edit and go into the BibFrame testbed, you can open up a file. So here's the same file of MARC XML, and then I'm going to save it in the same place here. And then you can see Terry has included some built-in conversions as well, so you can convert from other formats other than just MARC XML, including binary MARC records. And then if you process it, you can see it's very quick. And now I have essentially the same file, but produced through MARC Edit instead of through XSLT proc, which is maybe a little lower barrier of entry for some people. So that's the static conversion. In addition to that, what we've done is we've extended the conversion facility of the Yaz toolkit, which is a venerable Z3950 client toolkit that also includes record conversion that is available under an open source license from Index Data. And the way that it's configured is that you use an XPath expression to select candidate nodes from the RDF XML to resolve against a configured endpoint. So in this example here, you can see that the lookup XPath towards the middle of the screen there is to find any agent that is the object of an agent property, that is the property of a contribution object, that is the object of a contribution property, and look it up against the label service of the Library of Congress name authority file. And so what that then does is it will look up that based on a particular key field. And so what the conversion will do is look up the match key against the designated endpoint and replace the RDF about attribute of the node with the appropriate identifier, so that what you end up with is a node that has a URI that points to something outside of the context of the single record, which is an extremely useful thing. So what we've done for testing purposes is we've configured the record conversions that I've talked about here as record formats in an installation of Index Data's Z3950 and SRU gateway server software MetaProxy. So what MetaProxy is it's kind of like a switchboard for Z3950 servers. So it can work with multiple Z3950, SRU, or Solr backends. It can combine the search results from multiple backends and then perform inline record conversion on the fly. So like most of our software, it's available under an open source license. In this case, it's under the GNU GPL version 2. And in our configuration that we have set up with the Library of Congress, users search the Library of Congress Voyager catalog using SRU, and they can get BIBFRAME records back. So this is proven to be extremely useful for testing and for validation of the conversion routines and the specifications. So we are actively doing this right now. So at this point, we've gone through a couple of releases of the static conversion, and we have a proof of concept of the active conversion operating against the id.loc.gov label service. And the Library of Congress has made a side-by-side comparison tool available to see how the conversion works in practice. So what this ends up looking like. So, an SRU server, SRU is essentially a web-oriented way of querying very much the same kinds of information retrieval problems that Z3950 tries to solve. And so here I'm going to just put in a URL with an SRU query against the Library of Congress server for a particular a particular LCCN, so 285.3828, and I'm specifying a record schema of BIBFRAME 2A. The record schemas that are available are BIBFRAME 2 and BIBFRAME 2A. 2 is a static conversion, 2A is an active conversion. And so this goes and actually searches the backend Voyager catalog for that LCCN, pulls it in, converts it to MARC XML first, and then it converts it into BIBFRAME RDF XML. And you can see here that that you end up with a BIBFRAME graph, RDF graph, and let me find an example of here you see an agent that has been resolved to a name authority identifier, which is what the active conversion does. So that the active converter, the active conversion step of the conversion has gone out and queried the Library of Congress name authority file with the match key here of Academy of Ancient Music, and it has come back with a name authority. So this is one way to take a look at the conversion. In addition, on their BibFrame page, www.loc.gov/BibFrame, the Library of Congress has also provided a link to a MARC to BibFrame comparison viewer, which I think is really, really useful. So in your own collection, you could look up anything that has an LCCN, and then you could put that LCCN into this comparison tool. So this is the same record now, and search it, and the comparison tool will show you how the here on the left is the MARC record. It renders the MARC record, so you can see what you're starting from. And then on the right-hand side, it renders the BibFrame as either RDF XML or as Turtle, which is a little more human-readable format of the same data. So you can see how the conversion works, and you can compare data fields on the left to how it comes out in BibFrame on the right. So the purpose of this tool is really, I mean, the purpose of most of this work, this is the product of kind of a research and development branch of the Library of Congress. The purpose of this work is really to exercise both the vocabulary of BibFrame to say, you know, is this expressive enough to capture the descriptive metadata that's available in a MARC record, and also to validate that the conversion specifications result in appropriately constructed RDF graphs. So that's sort of a summary of the work we have done so far. So depending on how these conversions get used, I can really imagine several different future directions for this work. First of all, the conversion style sheets themselves could be made much more configuration driven. And what I mean by that is that there are already configurable static mappings for some of the concepts in BibFrame that are represented in the Library of Congress's linked data service, like carriers and relators and languages. And there's more work that can be done in this area to deliver statically converted triples, which of course are going to be much higher performing than the active conversion. And those statically converted triples then are already linked to other graphs in the semantic web. So that's a very useful thing to be able to do. It would also be very useful to develop a mapping schema for specifying the MARC to BibFrame conversion. And one thought that we had was to look at the RDF mapping language, which is RML. You can see the URL there on the screen. Developing a schema would allow the conversion specifications that are currently distributed as spreadsheets and text documents to be living configurations rather than something captured in code, which it is in large part right now. That would allow for much easier updating and more flexibility. Different institutions could specify the conversion in different ways. Right now, I think that a lot of anyone who's using this is probably doing some pre-processing because of specific characteristics of their own record corpus. And so it would be really, really useful to be able to specify the conversion in configuration rather than having to rely on the code or rely on pre-processing of records. And then another thing that I think needs to be done is to build out and refine the facility for active conversion considerably by adding support for other kinds of endpoints other than just the Library of Congress label service, and functionality to deal with result sets. Right now, it deals with simple exact matches, but it doesn't really deal with result sets. So if we were going to try to use the virtual international authority file, for example, it would be really important to be able to deal with a result set and pick the right match when we're trying to resolve entities. So that's work that I imagine doing in the near to the immediate future. Going forward, it's really interesting to me to imagine applications that use this BIB framework to create a workflow for metadata management that would allow metadata librarians to move seamlessly through the process of legacy data transformation. So you could ingest records from Z3950 and other network endpoints, as well as local data stores, explode them into RDF triples in a local triple store, and then refine and curate the resulting linked data. There is some really interesting work that does something very much like this, using these style sheets. That's coming out of the National Library of Finland. They call it the BIB RDF pipeline. Another way to do this would be to use the YAS toolkit to perform active conversion of MARC data files on the fly. And I'll just give you a quick sample of how that might work. So here I have a there we go. Here I have a MARC data file. This is a standard binary MARC with 100 records. It's encoded as MARC 8, so it's not UTF-8 records. And I have configured the YAS record conversion utility to essentially, it takes a MARC file and turns it into UTF-8 as XML, and then it runs the style sheet for doing the transformation, and then it runs the RDF lookup to look up again the agents from contribution. And so when I do that, so this is a very simple demonstration of what a pipeline might begin to look like. I end up with then the RDF XML that that has been converted, and that also includes, as you can see down here, it also includes the resolved agent entities here. So resolving to the Library of Congress name authority file. So so that's just a kind of a pointer for some future directions that you might consider how to use this work in your own workflows. So that work is, I think, appropriate to the scale and the mission of institutions like the Library of Congress, to take a full set of records and convert them into BIBFRAME and deduplicate works and publish the whole schmear as linked data. But I can also imagine other applications for this work, like a metadata management application for what we call copy cataloging now, that would make it simple to link an item in hand to the vast graph of linked data that projects like this BIBFRAME conversion are creating, and then add local information and access points and publish it in a local linked data fragment server to hook your own collection up with the semantic web of linked data. Or I can imagine an RDF reasoning engine that could power a discovery layer for our metadata that would make it possible for our patrons and the research communities we support to ask questions of our metadata that are currently really nearly impossible to formulate. So it's pretty fun stuff, and that is why we at Index Data stay in this business. So so that's what I had to show you today. So I hope it was helpful to you, and thank you very much.
Okay, gotta unmute here. So thank you very much, Wayne. That was fascinating and just technical enough to kind of spur imaginations of a lot of people now. I think we're now at the point that we could take questions, and so far I have not seen any questions in the YouTube chat. So maybe I'll start off with one. It sounds like where we are now with this conversion in BIBFRAME 2 is we're in a testing phase. And I know already from discussions on the BIBFRAME list and from explorations that I and Amanda Hsu and some other people I know have been doing, that we're finding things that need to be changed or improved, and working with people of the Library of Congress and about how to go about making those changes. How will you handle updates to the conversion and notifying people of what changes have been made?
Sure, that's a great question. Let me share my screen again, actually, because I can kind of show you.
By the way, I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Laura Ackerman.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'm Laura Ackerman from Emory University, and I'm coordinator of the Igaloo Luna Linked Open Data Special Interest Working Group.
Okay, so right now the most efficient way, I mean, there are sort of two things. There are sort of two ways that you can participate in this work, in this testing right now. And the first is to participate, I think, in the BIBFRAME forum mailing list. And I don't have a link for that. Laura, I don't know if you have one that you could share with the group. But on that list, there's quite a lot of discussion going on about these conversions, questions being asked, and some answers, and some further work that's being developed out of that. Staff from the Library of Congress are very involved in that mailing list, so that's to reach them. Another way to reach them is, if you're more technically inclined, the GitHub repository. This is really a very active project right now. You can see the latest commit was just 3 days ago, and we have the issue log open on this project. And we've been working with several people on issues that they have noticed in the conversion, and made changes and fixes to the conversion. So what we are trying to do is to have a relatively stable release cycle. So we're releasing batches of features every month or so right now. I imagine that's going to slow down a bit as it becomes a little more mature. But let's see, where's there? You can see that our last release was 21 days ago. We're actually getting ready to put out a new release probably right at the beginning of May. That's going to include some new features. But if you want the latest features, you can always just clone down the code. As soon as we fix things, we push them up into the master branch of this repository. So hopefully that gives you some directions on how you can reach us. I don't know what, in terms of publicity around this, the BIBFRAME page on the Library of Congress website is attempting to, keep some updates going, but that's always a little hit and miss. So the best place to go is actually the GitHub repository. So I see that someone has posted a question about the XSLT conversion spreadsheets and whether they address all formats. And I wonder if I could get a little clarification on that, because I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Oh, Wayne, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I had a little microphone. I had to switch computers, and I had a little mic problem, but I'm back. So, assuming that he might mean all formats of material, MARC formats, meaning serials, visual materials, video, audio, etc., as well as text, is
Yes,
everything covered?
Well, as best we can, absolutely, yeah. I think serials are an ongoing issue. Okay. Do the transformation sheets address all bibliographic formats? So again, yes, we are dealing with we deal with all different material formats, if that's what you mean. If what you mean is, does it deal with binary MARC as well as MARC XML? No, it really, the style sheets themselves deal only with MARC XML, but it is pretty trivial to get binary MARC translated into MARC XML using MARC Editor or other tools to do that. We definitely, definitely MARC holdings are not very well addressed yet. That is that is some ongoing work in terms of, there are some real open questions about what the best way to create items. So the BIBFRAME model, which is, it might be useful to just throw up on. The BIBFRAME model imagines that there are, in the world of bibliographic description, there are works, instances, and items. So this is sort of a simplification of the Ferber model. A work can have or contributors who are creation. They can have subjects. An instance is really more about the particular manifestation of a work, and then an item is something that is sitting on a shelf, possibly in a library. And what traditional MARC cataloging has mostly done is described works in instances, and items are very much a local thing in a lot of ways. And while we have MARC fields that deal with them, and we have things like the MARC holdings format that can help to specify holdings, support for that is not necessarily across the board among automation vendors. and many vendors, sort of do their own thing, right, and stick things into 9xx fields when they are dumping out MARC records, or we get holdings information in lots of different ways. So that's probably an area where there's more work to be done. So Jack, I hope that helps to answer your question. So Daniel asks, is there a prototype visualization tool you would recommend in order to navigate the RDF graph through a browser? I have to confess that's not really my area of expertise. I haven't done much work in that, and so I don't have anything to recommend. But I'm sure there are others on this call who could have some really good input on that.
Okay, I guess I should mention something here about the chat, and I had forgotten. Because I was logged into Google already, it didn't give me any problem chatting. But if you want to be able to contribute questions, you're going to need to have a Google login and log in. There's probably will be a login in the upper right-hand corner of YouTube. And sorry about this. I'll try to give more better instructions next time. This is the best we can do. If that doesn't work for you, you may email me, liblna@emory.edu, your question, and I'll try to pass it through. But I see that we have a number of questions now. Can you prototype, Daniel Lovins asks, is there a prototype visualization tool you would recommend in order to navigate the RDF graph through a browser? Did we get that one?
Yes, I think I addressed that. I don't
Okay.
have a particular recommendation, but I know there are some good tools out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's wait a moment and give people a chance to figure out how they could contribute questions. I know there must be a lot of questions out there. After this will, of course, be archived on the Show&Tell YouTube channel, and we'll see if we can address any additional questions that come in through the chat on that presentation.
And please do feel free, to contact me if you have questions as well as working through Laura or posting to the mailing list or whatever venue works best for you.
Again, if you are having trouble posting a question, you can email it to me, liblna@emory.edu. Hope that email it at Emory is working quickly. Okay, I see that Daniel Lovins has mentioned Castellini having a prototype for visualizing and navigating BIBFRAME data. So that might be something to look into. Okay. Stephen Hearn asks, if the converter receives an ID URL in its source data, can it retrieve label data? Okay, so this is interesting, and I think with the converter as it was first released, there are some issues when we had a URL in a subfield 0 already.
Right. So there's a pretty I think there's a pretty good specification for what to do with subfield zeros and subfield W's. If you're doing the static conversion, the subfield 0 is in the current version of the converter, a subfield 0 or subfield W will become the URI of the node to which it relates. There are some issues because those are repeatable fields, and so you're never sure exactly what you're dealing with in terms of a field like, say, a name authority, a name title authority field, where you're not sure if the subfield 0 refers to the person or to the work. I've seen in the wild certainly some of those where they have multiple subfield zeros, and the first one refers to the person and the second to the work, and there's just really no way to tell which one is supposed to be right. But does that get at the question that's being asked?
I'm not sure. What he's asking is if there's a URI, can you retrieve the label?
I see. No, the converter does not do anything like that. It doesn't retrieve the label. Basically, it makes an assertion, right, that whatever else I may say about this, let's say this name authority, whatever else I may say about this name authority, which is and then with a URI that's provided, I'm also saying these things that I found in this record about it. So the label, a client consuming the RDF could resolve that URI and go and get the information, but the converter does not do that.
Okay, because I know there's sort of a tension between wanting your converter to do everything for us so that we don't have to make our client applications more complicated, and I think Library of Congress may be properly saying we'll do this much and the rest is up to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's also the question of someone has to do this work of actually taking the MARC record subfield by subfield, or in the case of the fixed fields, right, character by character, and saying this piece of data means this in this other vocabulary. And I think the feeling is that is the work that is, in some ways it's interesting. I mean, I find it interesting, but in some ways it's really very boring. And it's also very labor intensive and resource intensive. And that maybe is the work that is properly done by a national library, like the Library of Congress, to do that analysis and do that, that really boring hard work. I mean, this is like 10,000 lines of XSLT. You know, so to provide that as a foundation then for other applications that maybe come from the community to use this work in order to build better systems. So I think that's what the goal of this work is to be really a kind of a basis for building better systems.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And we have one more question from Esther Guggenheim, whom I believe that's the National Library of Israel. Does BIBFRAME support local fields, 9XX? And if yes, how can libraries add translations for their local fields? Okay.
Well, you can certainly extend. I mean, one of the things that the Library of Congress has done is that they've extended the BIBFRAME ontology by creating their own secondary ontology that they call BFLC, I think, for some custom things that they want to do. So let me share my screen again here real quick. So there is a, where is it? Oh, here it is. It's here. So there is an extension to BIBFRAME that the Library of Congress has done that contains some extra properties and some extra classes and some extra properties. And imports like things like the relators in order to do some things that they feel are important to converting their corpus of records, but not necessarily anyone else's. I mean, maybe they'll be useful for someone else, but really, you know, they didn't feel that this belonged, at least not right away, in the BIBFRAME vocabulary proper. So you can certainly create an ontology that extends and inherits from the BIBFRAME classes to convert your 9XX fields, for example. Or the other thing is that if you look at how the conversion works, and for this you would have to be a little bit of an XSLT person, but the conversion is really pretty modular, and so you could add another style sheet into here for your local use that would convert your local fields to do what you want them to do using the model of some of those style sheets that we have. So I think that would be another way to actually extend the functionality of the converter to meet your local needs.
Right. And from what I know of 9XX fields, I mean, it's a very mixed bag. They seem to be configured differently for every library system that you use. Some of them are acquisitions information or item information. They may not be up to date. How item information is going to get translated into BIBFRAME is sort of another can of worms. But we're pretty much out of time now. So I think that maybe you know, if we can gather some more questions, we may have to have you back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was, I'm sure, just of a lot of interest to technologists and people in cataloging metadata work. So we appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you very much. It's really fun to talk about this work. It's been very all-consuming for a number of months for me. So it's good to have a reason to talk about it.
It's been a tremendous piece of work, and as much as we may start to dig into it and find nits to pick, the quality of that conversion is, just kind of amazing. So, bravo and thank you. And thank you, Mehmet, for setting up this session. And we'll see you in another show and tell soon.
Great, thanks.